Insane in the Membrane.
Welcome to Insane in the Membrane. This week I'm joined by the brilliant Alexander Bennett. Hello.
Hello, Rich Wilson. How are you?
I'm good, man. How are you? You all right? Well, everything all right?
I'm all right. I'm currently up to my neck in Edinburgh Fringe admin.
You and a million others, man. Yeah.
Yep, so I am overworked, underpaid, skin. Isn't
Isn't it funny how us comedians Edinburgh we lose money doing it, but every year we go, all right, fuck it, I'm going to do it again, and somehow we manage to find the money. I don't know how, but we seem to pluck it out of nowhere.
Well, I can find the money this year because I've not done it for 4 years.
Excellent.
Which is wild to me because my last full run was 2019 pre-pandemic, and then I did just a couple of dates in that beautiful 2021 Fringe where there were about 4 shows and every room was full. Oh. And it was if you didn't do that, if you're a comedian and you didn't do that Edinburgh, you lost out and you'll never have that again.
Ever.
It was so beautiful.
It was wonderful, wasn't it? No, I was up there for a week. Just got to see everybody. After it, we'd been locked down as well, so it was lovely. And
I did 2 work-in-progress shows at the Monkey Barrel, and it was literally reading off notes, and filled the room
excellent
because people were just up for comedy, and I was there in front of an audience where I was like, I feel because I've got a full room in front of me, and I've not been performing that much because of the pandemic. I really kind of want to, give this room the beans. But I thought, no, you've booked an hour of new stuff. Commit to an hour of new stuff. And on the way out, I could hear the audience, and the audience were going, "Yeah, I like that bit, and I can see where he's going to take that bit, and I like the sort of clever thing he did at the end." I was like, "Oh, so it's the comedy savvy people who have come to see us in this kind of rebuilding state." It was so gorgeous.
I think it was just nice. I don't think. It wasn't until we were locked down that we really appreciated what we actually do for a living. And not just a comedy, just we lost our whole universe where this bunch of misfits from different places, we sort of come together and are sort of connected with that sort of silent understanding that, yeah, you're a bit weird.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And that's why when we lost that and we were a bit like, oh, fuck, now what? I've got to... Oh God!
Yeah, I've just got to do me on my own for a bit. And one of the pleasures of being a comedian, and one of the pleasures of doing Edinburgh Fringe as part of that, is getting to interact with so many different people from so many different walks of life. Because there's so many different kinds of people on the circuit, and in Edinburgh, I know wrestlers because I did the Edinburgh Fringe. Yeah. I know magicians and stuff.
It's crazy, isn't it? I know. Yeah, if I'd have stayed doing what I was doing, I wouldn't have travelled the world. I wouldn't have met, as you've just said, wrestlers, jugglers, all manner of folks, poets, and authors.
Absolute scumbags.
Scumbags. And I realise I'm not as scummy as I thought it was.
Yeah.
And it's all thanks to comedy, and that's I think that's one of the good things that I took out of the pandemic, out of the lockdowns, was I now have a newfound appreciation for everything that we have.
But as I say, I've not done a full run since 2019, and this year is my first year because I've been doing the Free Fringe for years, and it's been great as a learning ground and being creative and learning how the Fringe works. But I'd never done a paid show in a paid venue because, despite this accent and the way I speak, I could never afford it. And this is the first time that I can afford to do paid and PR and all that kind of thing. So I'm doing that.
So go for it.
Yeah,
I think for people listening that I've heard of the Edinburgh Festival but haven't actually sort of been up there. It's the biggest arts festival in Europe, and we all pile up there hoping that our show will get a little bit of success or whatever, and then we forget that there's a million other shows that are up there hoping for the same thing, and we're all hoping to get noticed and whatever else, and it costs a fortune, and we don't make any money. Even if we make money doing the gig, we lose money because the accommodation is exorbitant. That costs a few grand, and being up there, and it's a lot. It's a lot of money, and it takes a lot out of you mentally. I know the last one last year. This is why I'm not going up this year, because last year really fucked me up. You know?
Just the kind of pressure of the kind of usual Edinburgh pressure, or was it just
which
the
is
kind of
just
exhaustion thing?
It's just that because because it's forever. You're going on every day, and you're up there, and every day you're worrying about ticket sales, and you're worrying about hopefully the show's going to be good, because you're doing the show every day. You're going to have you'll have good ones, and then there's going to be the one where you die. It's like you have a whole comedy career in 3.5 weeks, and it's brutal, you know. And last year we had other things to deal with, like people haven't got enough money now, so there weren't as many people coming out. And then we had the train strikes, then we had the dustman strikes, and we had everything going on. And it took a lot. It took a lot last year, and I just I can't do it.
It is like a whole career in a month. You get that initial sort of, your previews at the beginning of the festival. That's open spot season in a comedian's life. That's you getting on your feet, and then there's that initial week of real optimism, and that's the sort of start of a comedian's career. And then there's the middle part, which is, I haven't got what I wanted, and other people have got what they want, and I feel tired. And then there's the end of the comedian's career, which is just, can we get this over and done with now, because I'm really finished with this.
I'm just done. And then you're on the train coming back, and it wasn't until afterwards that I got the numbers back, and I was like, oh, okay, it wasn't as bad as I thought. I just thought I kept turning up to an empty room every day, but actually on the whole it actually worked out all right. But I just didn't want to go through that again, and I don't think people don't really know that side of comedy. They don't see the bit where we're travelling up and down the motorway, we're sleeping in bus stations, we're doing overnights on mega buses, and you know, I used to say, when I was married before, my wife would come in from work and she'd find me sat in the same place she left me in the morning. And she's like, what have you been doing? I'm like, I've been working. Where is it? I'm like, it's in my head. And then and then she'd come to a show, she'd go, oh, I see. Because I'm like, that's what I'm doing. It's all in my head, with a few notes and notebooks scattered around. There's a lot of work goes into what people see. People see the 20 minutes, the half hour, the hour. They don't realise it takes hours to get to that point, that show.
And there's a weird balance, from a kind of, talking about how this stuff affects you mentally. There's a weird balance, and I imagine this is true of other creative industries as well, where you have to give yourself that sitting on the sofa time to let the ideas come, to let the back of your brain kick in, to give you the good ideas. Because I think most comedians will tell you, this is certainly true of me, it's probably true of you as well, you can tell me different. Most of the best jokes or bits you've ever come up with did not come up when you were sat in a coffee shop really looking at a paper, really trying to write. Most of the best bits appear because you've given your brain enough time to have the space for something that you're not in control of at the back of your brain going on to kick in, and then you go, oh, that's a perfect idea for a joke. Those are always the strongest bits, and then the work is kind of tying it all together. But in comedy, and presumably, if you're a musician, this must be true as well, you have to balance that with this kind of, we are all our own businesses. It's for people who aren't in the comedy world, it's what we are is we're a business. We market ourselves and we deliver a product, and we have to kind of increase the market value of that product, and you have to have all of that going on at the same time as trying to give yourself enough kind of mental space to go, what's a really interesting and funny thing that I could talk about that also makes a point about something else, or it's a very weird mixture of disciplines.
It is, and now it's. I mean, this has been said on here many times, but now it's even more. When I started in 2004, which doesn't sound that far away, but it's in the 2000s, so that's fine. But
coming up on 20 years, Rich.
Coming up on 20 years next October. It's you kind of, all you had to do was worry about your material. All you had to worry about was booking your gigs, getting to the next gig, moving up and getting to the better paid gigs. And now there's just so many other things you have to do, because a lot of promoters now will go, oh, you've got this many followers on whatever, you've got this much output, you've got an audience. Oh, that's gonna, if we book you, then that audience will hopefully come to our club. So there's this whole new pressure now that was never there before, you know. And it, like you say, it's all these different disciplines. And then, you know, someone else sort of comes in and goes, what have you been doing all day? And you go, I couldn't even begin to tell you, but it looks like nothing.
Yeah. And you've got to give yourself the space to do nothing, because that's the only kind of the thing about the circuit changing. So probably the unusual thing about it's less unusual these days, but the sort of more unusual thing about me as a comedian is, so I'm 30 now, turned 30 at the end of last year, but I started gigging when I was 15.
Wow.
So I started in 2008.
Bloody hell.
Yeah, I've been going a long time for how old I am. And I remember the circuit changing as well. I remember Michael McIntyre breaking, because I was gigging before he broke on mainstream success.
Yeah.
And the circuit has changed a lot in terms of what people's priorities are, how people sort of move through the profession. It's a very different thing. In some ways, it's a lot better in terms of, you know, the kind of people that you are seeing on stage, in terms of, you know, a broader range of people, different backgrounds. But comedy has become a lot more like pop music. It is focused on the thing. What's the new thing that we can see if we can make a sec? In the late 90s, early 2000s, it was comedy's the new rock and roll. Comedy is pop music now. It is pop music. Yeah,
you're right.
What can we sell? What's the thing that we can, you know, pump out?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And there's so many people doing comedy now. Like you've just said, you've probably seen this as well. When I started out, you sort of knew everybody, you know, and you'd see each other at gigs, and every now and again you'd be away together wherever. But now every week I'm meeting somebody new, and there's so many people doing it that it's difficult to keep up with it all.
Yeah, it's an odd one, particularly when you see, like, and this never used to happen, but you'll see, like, you know, on like Chortle or like a comedy news website, you'll see, you know, who's in this new TV show, and you look at the TV show and you go, well, I don't even know who that is. How have they got booked for that? I've never even heard that name before.
There's a lot of people that are writing behind the scenes as well, that suddenly you're like, well, where the fuck did they come from? And now they're, you know, there are so many different things going on now. You can't keep up with it all. You just got to focus on what you're doing. Hope, you know, because if you got to work on your own act and keep it relevant. Otherwise, there's so many people now that they're just going to go, well, Rich hasn't written a new bit of gear in years, so we're going to we might get into MC, but we're going to focus on the people that are changing it all the time, and there's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
That's why
I didn't get in this for pressure. I got into this because someone said you can make some money telling jokes. I was like, yeah, fine.
Yeah.
I'll do that.
Yeah, I got into stand-up because I loved, like comedy movies and sitcoms. Like, I was raised on Ronnie Barker. That was my
amazing.
Because my dad's... my dad just basically sat down and went, right, we're going to watch Open All Hours and Porridge, and I still think Porridge is one of the best sitcoms ever made.
Absolutely, without a doubt, yeah.
Yeah, I love it so much, and I loved him, Ronnie Barker, so much. And I wanted to get into that. I wanted to be like a Ronnie Barker actor type. But it's just not accessible where I'm from. I'm from Shrewsbury in the Midlands.
Okay.
And although nowadays there's a lot of money knocking about the town, there wasn't in my family. So what stand-up was it was a thing that you could ring a guy and go, can I do 5? And he'd go, yeah, all right. That's your obstacle between you and trying to be creative.
That was it, yeah. So where does the accent come from then? Because you sound like you're from Money. Or that's just my uncultured ears.
Well, so I think it's a combination of factors. The first factor being is that I'm from a part of the Midlands that doesn't really have a specific accent.
Right.
And there's quite a lot of bits of the Midlands like that. You wouldn't necessarily know if someone was from Stafford. You wouldn't necessarily know if someone was from Leicester. So it's a combination of that. But also, when I became obsessed with comedy, all of the people I was obsessed with were Cambridge educated.
Right.
So I'm watching the Pythons. Ronnie Barker's natural speaking voice was a very posh RP speaking voice. Peter Cook, and a lot of the comedians that were sort of coming up, sort of more current acts at the time. And I thought that Rowan Atkinson as well.
Right. Yeah.
Was a huge influence on me. So it's basically you imitate the people that you admire, and you try and for some people, growing up, that would have been like a music scene. So you dress in a punky way if that's what you're into when you grew up. And for me, it was about having a sort of this kind of slightly withering voice, and it is at odds with. I don't want to see. There is an issue in comedy with middle class people pretending they're working class. I don't want to overplay my hand here. I did not grow up on a council estate, and there was food on the table, but my dad was a builder and my mum was a teaching assistant, and neither of them went to university. And it was a working class upbringing in quite a nice town. That's how I put it. So I became this basically because it was aspirational. It was the people that I want to be are like this, so let's be like this.
I actually don't know why I sound the way I do, because my dad, I've said this before, my dad was a civil servant, and my mum, I think my mum's side of the family, very working class, but my dad's side of the family, they're from the West Country, but had kind of Hyacinth Bouquet kind of levels of, higher standards. So yes, we lived around a council estate. We're not right on it, and we lived in a house sort of on the edge. So I grew up with geezers, so maybe that's where it comes from. But I'm not really like that. I'm not a big football fan. I'm not someone that I'm not fucking. But whenever someone, I'm always described as a geezer, and I'm like, I'm not a geezer. I just appear to be like someone. Dave Longley said you sound like someone that could get me a new pair of trainers or a gun. And I'm like, all right, fine. I'm not going to fight it anymore. But
I don't think you sound like that. I think you sound like someone who used to be able to get me a new pair of trainers or a gun, but now runs quite a nice cafe. It's like,
been out of the game for a few years now.
Yeah. He took the money he made and he went straight with it. To be fair to him.
Yes, because all my mates either died or banged up, and I'm like, I don't want that life anymore. I'm out, boys.
I don't want that life. I've got kids of my own. They've got to have a stable house.
Could open a pie and mash shop in Stepney. So you can have a nice quiet life. Got the missus.
Telling all the customers about how things used to be.
I used to know the craze. Yeah, they used to come and I used to knock around with it. My granddad went to school with the Richardsons, so I remember Mum telling me stories about that. My nan telling me stories about that, about how they asked him to go and work for him, and he went, "No, I think you're all cunts," and he just went and joined the Navy instead. So so even that.
Do you want to know?
It's in there.
Do you want to know a story about someone who worked for the Richardsons?
Mm-hmm. Who
I met. So I went to film school. That's how I got to London. I got into film school, and moved down to London. And you do like a documentary module where you have to make your own documentary. And the guy on my course found this guy in a bar in Soho, where it was basically the old criminals bar in Soho. All of the patrons had done time and were criminals in one sort of manner or another. But the bar had been bought by new owners, and they were trying to turn it, because it was like kind of a cool small space with old-fashioned decor.
Yeah.
They were trying to turn it into a sort of hipster joint.
Right.
So there was this weird blend of like 22-year-old lads who've grown their first mustache and they're wearing like fake frames. Chatting to guys who used to do post offices. And it was a weird mix of people. And my friend went down there when we found this guy. I won't say his name, but he'd been a bank robber in the 70s for the Richardsons.
Wow.
And at the time that he was working for them, the Richardsons saw what the Krays were doing, because Richardsons was South London, Krays were North London. Could be wrong.
Krays were East, yeah.
East. They were looking at what the Krays were doing, and the Krays were kind of ruling by intimidation. They were kind of, if you say anything about what we've done, we'll batter you, basically. And they decided, because they saw it wasn't very effective, because people hated them because of it. And the Richardsons, at this moment in time, they were going, we'll go the Robin Hood angle. So everything that we steal, we give something back to the local community. And they particularly gave it to pensioners. They would give it to old people. Pensioners and nurses. That's who they were giving it to, because the nurses are looking after the old people. These need the money. So that meant that if the Richardsons did something and the police asked the local community, what have you been up to? The local community would say, didn't see anything, because they're getting the kickback. And this bank robber that we found, we wanted to make the documentary about how he met his first wife, because he'd been working for the Richardsons, and they used to throw big parties for the nurses, and it was, it was kind of social thing, and he saw this nurse that he quite liked at this party, but he didn't have the guts to kind of go up and say hello to her, and he remembered her and he regretted it because he didn't have the chance to, put the moves on. About 3 months later, he stood in a bank with a pair of tights over his head, holding a sawn-off shotgun, while his mate is over the counter putting money into a bag, because it's the 70s and money was just in a counter. And he sees this nurse with her hands over her head on the floor, and he's like, oh, that's that nurse that I like. So he goes over to the bank counter, gets a blank cheque and a pen, and writes his phone number on the blank cheque. Goes over to the nurse, puts it in her hand, and that's how he met his first wife.
What? She rang him?
She rang him afterwards.
I mean, there's only one way to go after that, isn't it? I mean, he was lucky she didn't grass him up.
Well, that's the risk, isn't it? That's the risk.
Yeah.
But you
the balls to do that. You're in the middle of a bank raid. You see that, and then you go, you give her evidence, basically. And she went, oh, no.
He gave her his home phone number.
I've never heard of anything like this before in my life. He might as well just taken his tights off his head and told everyone his name. Man.
Anyway,
simpler times, more innocent times.
That's what I was doing at university, chatting to him.
Wow. You know, it's funny. There's a few videos that keep popping up on social media, and all the old gangsters talking about what they used to get up to, and it's even what they did was horrible, but the way they're telling it just seems so almost like childlike. It's like a real kind of like, yeah, we did what we did, but it was all business. It was what it was. Whereas now, gangsters, it just seems awful. It's just all out warfare, but I guess that's just time, isn't it? That makes it seem more playful.
Yeah, maybe it's viewing it through rose tinted, or maybe there's something in it. Was that those kind of London gangs did come from a genuine kind of working class background, where although you're behaving in appalling ways, ultimately you are kind of community minded in a weird sort of fucked up kind of way. It's
I know what you mean. Where you're sort of robbing. Mind you, the Krays were more bullying shopkeepers, but it seemed to be like bank robbers. It's like, well, that's not your money. That's the bank's money. We're just going to have it. Do you know what I mean?
And I'm saying that this is their ideology, which is why they can look back on it. But also, presumably, if you're in that kind of criminal outfit, you feel very close to the people that you're close to. So you're sort of you're thinking back to, people that your family, basically.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I can see that. It's funny when you meet these people, or people that are, in that kind of lifestyle. They're a different breed. Like, you might have thought that you've done something a little bit naughty, but these people have been properly naughty. It's just, when you meet someone like that, you're like, they have a different vibe where you go, I would not want to be on the wrong side of you.
Yeah, and the kind of, I think this about the guy that I knew that I interviewed for university. He was, he went from very gregarious and generous to very intimidating very quickly. And he seemed shot through with regret.
Oh, really?
He knew that I think one of the reasons that he was so focused on his own children, which is the reason that he moved out of the game that he was in, was his feeling was, my life has been wasted, but I can give it value by giving theirs value.
Wow.
He's not a happy man.
No, I mean, that's it. You don't get into that. I mean, well, yeah, there are people that get into it because they like it, but majority of people, it's just circumstance, isn't it? They kind of just end up in that environment. And yeah, I'm glad. Yeah, I knew people like that, but I never got involved. And there was someone I knew, and I needed some money for rent or something. Like, he went, "I'll sort you out." I'm like, "Absolutely not. I don't need to owe you money."
Yeah.
Because I know we're mates, but you'll have me upside down in a fucking barn somewhere. I don't need that.
I never knew people like that growing up, but because I was I was at school, I was the sort of SWAT boy of all the boys. I was the SWATy one, and that kind of deteriorated over time, but it was broadly true. But because I was funny, I was friends with all the naughty kids. To the point where teachers would say, "Can you keep an eye on them for us?" It's like, "No, I'm not being a snitch for you."
Yeah.
But that meant that I didn't, like, as a kid, and I'm talking like 13, 14, 15, 16. I'd met a lot of drug dealers by that point.
Yeah.
Because all the kids I was hanging out with were doing drugs, but they wouldn't let me do any because they were like, at 14, they're like, no, Bennett, you've got your whole life ahead of you. I've already gone down this road.
Yeah, it's not for you, babes. It's not for
It's
you.
like
You want
a child saying to another child, "No, I've taken a wrong turn here, pal, but there's still a future for you."
Yeah, there's no hope for me. I'm only 12, but there's no hope.
But I couldn't possibly recover.
Well, how'd you find it? So you've been doing comedy since you were 15,
Yeah.
and so have you? So when you left, did you go to uni? Did you do that?
Yeah, so 18, left sixth form. Chose my. I did two lists of do I want to go to drama school or do I want to go to film school, and then I thought I cannot spend 3 years with the sort of people that go to drama school. So I went
it's all a bit jazz hands, isn't it?
Yeah, well, the actual reason is I thought I'm already sort of performing, so I'm sort of developing that skill set on its own, but I'd like to learn the filmy stuff, and I can't do that without support. And then basically chose all of my universities on the basis that they were in London, because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to move to London and do comedy, which at 18 I did. The film school was fairly intense, so I didn't really get to kind of apply myself until afterwards. But yeah, that's how I got down to London. Basically, was through uni.
That's a good plan, though. You obviously had something about you that, you sort of that you could work that out. I wouldn't have been able to work that out. I just sort of ricocheted through life. I was like, I don't want to do school anymore. And then someone went, "Oh, I've got a job at this removal place. Come and do that." I went, "Yeah, fine," and just kind of just wandered off. And I've just kind of bing-bonged my way up into being a comedian now.
Well, I definitely, I have had a very strong idea that I wanted to do writing and performing things. I originally wanted to be a cartoonist because I was obsessed with cartoons and I used to draw all the time. But then I sort of worked out that what I liked about the cartoons that I liked was the writing and the performances, really. And yeah, for me, it was just about getting down to London because I felt so stuck in my town. Because Shrewsbury is a very nice place, and you know, people go there now and they look at the high street and go, "Oh, this is a very posh little town." And
it's lovely.
I would and I would say most high streets in towns look nice, and then there's a whole other town, and then there's a whole other town, 20 years ago. But it was just about getting to London, and it seemed the only way that I was going to be able to do that was to go to uni and build some connections at uni, so that when I was out of university, I would be able to kind of support myself down in London.
Yeah.
But then that's my thinking from my perspective. My teachers, because my grades were pretty good, they were trying to put me on the sort of Cambridge path.
Right.
They're going, you could do this. And I was going, no, I want to go to film school. And boy, do I regret it.
I was going to say, do you regret that now?
Yeah. Listen, say what you like about those two universities. They open doors.
Yeah, they do. I think there's a bit in Bob Mortimer's book about that. I think he got offered a place at Cambridge and then just went, no, I don't want to, and just went to, I don't know where he went, but I can't remember where he went, but it wasn't Cambridge. And his mum was so disappointed, because he comes from Middlesbrough, a very working class town, and he got a chance to go to Cambridge, and he fucked it.
Yeah,
it hasn't done him any harm.
No, it certainly hasn't. No, because because he would. I'm trying to think how old he would have been when Big Night Out started, because he must have been early 20s when that.
It would have been. Yeah, he would have been sort of early to mid 20s, maybe. But even then, when I was younger, I loved comedy, but I never thought I'd be doing it. I was never around anybody that kind of had those ideas, and I never thought, I didn't have it in me to go, well, if there isn't anyone around, just do it yourself. Never occurred to me. It's like, being a musician, it was like, that's what other people did. I always wanted to, but I would have needed someone to go and do it. I never really had it in me to do it. It's like comedy. It was other comics when I was working as a barman, and they were going like, go and do comedy. You'll be able to do this. You're really funny. It took other people to say it. So for you to be at that young age and going, I'm going to fucking do it. That's really impressive to me anyway. I think that's great.
It is a bit. It is a bit odd because I was incredibly nervous, like child and teenager.
Oh, really? Quite shy?
I had a stutter.
Did you really?
I had an anxiety-driven stutter.
Yeah, right. Do you think that's that's another place where the accent comes from? Is like focusing on what you're saying, and enunciating and.
Yeah, maybe actually. Do you know what? I hadn't considered that, but that might be. Yeah, I do also. I do tend to speak in a kind of slow and considered way, and that is partly, I think, my brain's trying to form anxiety. Like an anxiety stutter is your kind of brain's trying to get too many ideas out at the same time,
right?
And it doesn't. The sort of physical. No doctor has ever spoken to me about this. It's just it's classic. My parents' kind of working class parenting is like, you had a stutter, but it disappeared, so we stopped worrying about it.
We kept an eye on it.
Yeah. So it was, and I was incredibly just a ball of anxiety. So it was weird for me to, but then the way I said to my parents, because, to give my parents their credit, of which they are due a lot, because I was 15, and there weren't any gigs in my hometown. They had to drive me around the Midlands as a 15-year-old. Oh, wow. And I would get to pubs that I wouldn't be allowed to go in through the front door because that would be breaking a licensing thing. But I could go in through the back, through the kitchen. It's sort of weird workaround to get around the licensing laws.
I think that's it. If you can have kids near food, and then they're allowed in the pub.
Well, they're allowed in the upstairs room of the pub.
Yeah.
And I latterly I've said to my mother, I was like, unusual thing for you and my dad to do, and unusual sort of, you know, to drive a 15-year-old to Derby, and you know, and then because I was so desperately nervous, I wouldn't let my parents watch me, so they would go and get the big shop done. They'd find a massive, like, Tesco or Sainsbury's and go and get their weekly shop done, and then I'd do my gig, and then we'd drive all the way back.
Wow.
And I said, what, that was very unusual. And my mum said it was the first thing you were ever interested in.
Ah, yeah, that's
And
interesting.
They were like, we were a bit worried about you because we weren't worried about you because your grades were good and you read, and that was sort of, for them, that was their sort of markers of he's going to be okay. And me and my sister both read a lot, and they were like, okay, so they're you know, they're absorbing information, they're learning, that's good. But he doesn't appear to have any interests whatsoever, apart from drawing. And then that kind of fell away. And I remember, you know, I said to my mother once, you and Dad very good at taking me and my sister to sort of, you know, castles and stuff, and like, you know, little science exhibitions. So I was like, you're very, very upwardly mobile, you know, parents, and sort of, we're going to try and do that. And my mum went, we were just trying to find something that you were interested in. It's like, it's my sister Ashley. They were like, she had her face in a book. We were fine with her, you know, because my sister just read constantly for her whole life. And my mum said, when you said I'd like to do this, it was the first like self-motivated thing that you'd ever done, where it's like, I have an interest, and that interest is I want to get in front of people and do a thing. So they were kind of like, yeah, absolutely, let's take this sort of slightly nervous teenager and who has developed an interest and support it. So that's the only way I owe it all to them, because, you know, I couldn't drive to Derby as a 15-year-old. They could.
Well, you could have done. You know, there's a lot of people from Derby that used to drive at a young age without a license, I'm sure, like the town I grew up in. But I grew up. I was very shy. Even now, sometimes it sort of kicks in, and I find it debilitating, and I can't do the thing I need to do. But for some reason, I just have this. I'm just drawn to being up on stage and making people laugh, and it's not even attention that I'm seeking. I'm after I love the thrill of that laughter. I'm addicted to that now. I feel when I do a gig and I get that first laugh, I feel all my anxieties kind of like drift away. I'm like, there we are. That's the good stuff, you know.
I've got a bit. I was chatting to previous guest on this show, Shan Doxey, the other day.
Excellent. Yeah, she was great.
And
she
is great. A fabulous comedian and human being. But I was through chatting to her. I've got a bit of a theory about this. Is that a lot of comedians are anxious people, and they are shy people and nervous people. And I think one of the reasons that we are drawn to doing comedy is whenever they do studies of how to live a happy life, all of those studies reach the same conclusion: that the key to the study is the key to happiness is living in the moment, right? Enjoy now. That's all these studies basically reach the same conclusion. And also, when they interview people who are nearing the end of their life, they're always the biggest regret is, I wish I lived in the moment more. And it's like that's how to be happy. How to be happy is not a complicated question. We know what the answer is.
Yeah.
But if you're anxious, like myself or yourself, like I spend so much of my life worrying about the future and regretting the past, and I just live in this constant, I need to do this. Oh, I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
What standing on a stage makes you do is it makes you be present.
Yes.
It makes you be there in the moment, because there's a room full of people and they're all looking at you, Rich. And they're all looking at you because you've got to be funny. And you can only be funny by being present. You've got to make that connection, even if you're using, your Club 20 that you've done 500 times. You've still got to be there, and you've still got to be in it. And I think
that's a great point. Yeah,
I think that's why anxious people are drawn to stand up specifically.
Yeah,
it forces you to be there, and it gets you out of your own head. It gets you out of your own anxiety.
That is it. That is why I like it. When I'm up there, I don't have to worry about things. I'm not worried about actual things that I need to sort out. That if I don't sort them out, I'm going to get in trouble. If I'm up there, I'm like, oh yeah, give a shit. I don't give a fuck about any of that. Yeah, that's a great point. That's excellent. Yeah.
And then you start being present and having a good time, because
Yes. That's nice. I like that.
Then you start being playful. If you're having a really good gig, you're having a really good gig, you got the audience, and then you start improvising on top of a joke in a way that you've not done before. You're doing a bit more of an act out, or you're pushing it. That's really being present. That's really being in it.
But I've had those moments, and you come off and you go, "Fuck! I don't even know what I said." But I just realise, I know that I've had a good time, and everyone's going mad. And I'm like, oh yeah, and it's nice to reach that state. But I am riddled with self-doubt and confidence issues a lot of the time. But I don't know what's happened lately. I'm kind of like, fuck it. What's the worst that can happen? And I kind of talk myself out of it now. As before, I used to let it engulf me, and I'd just be crippled. I'd just be laying on the bed, not getting out of bed until like 2 p.m. And then I'd be in that cycle of fuck. I haven't done anything today, and then I'd feel shit again.
Anxiety, and I think, and I've had serious kind of depression on and off for 20 years. The kind of, for me, the kind of biggest sign that I'm in one of those sort of periods is just I'm not doing anything. I'm just sort of stuck and kind of paralyzed by it. That's sort of the biggest thing, I think, is that kind of anxiety. It just keeps you in one place. I think sort of people sort of who aren't necessarily that anxious would think that anxious people would be kind of flighty or kind of, oh, what's happening? Oh, kind of, almost like panicked. But in my experience, anxiety is just being stopped. Just kind of hitting a wall and not being able to sort of do anything or get over it.
I think that's it. I used to worry, is this ever going to go away? And you're trying to do all you can to sort of get out of it. And then there was a few times I just let it engulf me and just go, just let it happen, just lay here and just let it wash over you. And hopefully it'll just kind of, sort of disappear on its own. I did that a few times, and it works sometimes. And then other times, like, all right, it's 3 days now. Yeah, you need to do something.
That kind of, if you're able to acknowledge the kind of place that you're in mentally and go, okay, I'm just going to ride through it. Maybe sometimes for some people that's useful. I think I always struggle with the thing that really screws me over is just not recognizing where I am kind of mentally. If I can recognize that I'm having a depressive episode, I now have the kind of toolkit to moderate my behavior and behave in a way that's going to help me. Usually, sometimes I still slip into bad behaviors, which in my history with depression is largely getting drunk and behaving in odd ways.
Same.
but you get some good stories out of it.
This is no good story starts with I was having a cup of tea.
Yeah. No good story starts with. So I was having my morning protein shake. And
I was just off to the gym, and
I just finished my Huel, and then a guy comes up to me.
It's always when I've gone fuck this, and I'm in the pub 3 p.m. and I'm like, I haven't got any money, but what I've got, I'm going to spunk it on this, and just,
Yeah.
and then suddenly there's always someone else that kind of rocks up. There's always there's a magical time in a pub where like-minded individuals just appear together, and you end up talking to whoever, and all manner of shit happens. I love it.
Yeah, it's a golden period where strangers.
I think that
suddenly
because it's during the day. I think it's what it is. It's that time as well because it's not 8:30 in the morning. So when you're with proper alcoholics in a Weatherspoons, because it's £3 a pint. I think it's a sort of 3 p.m. 3 p.m. is normally people that are either in our industry or they're also freelancers. They're maybe writers or wherever they are, but they've got that time. And all at once, we all kind of go, I'm going to go out and I'm going to have a pint. This is bollocks. And we all kind of meet at the same time. So it's not complete despair and devastation, but there's an anxiety or there's a need to go, for fuck's sake. And we go and have a pint and we all bump into each other.
But then, of course, what's the best function of a pint is that it gets rid of some of your social anxiety. That's why it becomes such an addictive thing. It's just you are less socially anxious 2 pints in. It's just,
God,
it's
2
just
pints
true.
is a sweet spot.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't know if it's because of my age, but now, it might be because my kidneys are fucked. I don't know what's happened, or my liver's just decided to give up. But I have a pint now, and I'm straight away, I'm like, whoa, the sweet spot comes along quicker.
Oh, does it? Okay.
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, there might be an issue here.
Yeah, I'm still trying to balance out my drinking since I had a pretty good relationship with booze before the pandemic, and then pandemic came along, and then also the work coming after the pandemic to try and get yourself back on track. You're just exhausted all the time, and the only way to relax is I'll have a glass of wine.
Yeah.
And Christmas comes around, and in our business, you're just working constantly from like mid-November right up until Christmas. So yeah, I'm still trying to recalibrate. I've got better, but I'm still possibly drinking a bit too much.
Well, we don't. I've said this loads of times on here. We don't really drink at home, but every now and again, like my wife Kate will go like, just get a bottle of wine, and we'll have a bottle of red wine, watch a bit of telly, and that's acceptable. It's when it just seems, if it's wine, it seems to be fine. It's like, oh yeah, you can have wine when you want, but if it's beer, you go, I'm just gonna have a beer. You go, mate, it's 10:30 in the morning. You go, you're not at an airport now. You're out in the real world. So
yeah,
it's later on.
It's weird that little, that sort of, if you're having a couple of pints at home, people might go, well, you're having a couple of pints at home on a Tuesday. But if you cook a nice meal and have a full bottle of wine between you and one other person,
it's completely fine.
It's like, do you know how alcoholic wine is? It's just...
I know. I read that it was in Jack Kerouac's book On the Road, and it was talking about Dean Moriarty, one of the characters, talking about his dad, and he was saying that his dad was a wine alcoholic, not a whiskey alcoholic, which is, a wine alcoholic is even worse. Because like you say, it's so potent, and it's more socially acceptable to have.
And it's a particular kind of drunk as well, wine, I think.
Yes.
It's a different kind of drunk. Wine was the thing that I really went at hard in the pandemic. Really? It just bottles of red wine. Because it's. I don't even know how to put it, but it's so fucking easy to drink, Rich.
Especially a good bottle of red.
Yeah. And it's like, when you're having pints and it's a bit too much and you feel a bit like full or whatever, it's not that. It's the wine you can drink when you're having a meal, wine you can drink, when you're just pottering about the flat, wine you can drink if you're just having a shower. There's all sorts of
yeah. Although there's a American comedian, Kyle Kinane, that I really like, and he's got this whole bit about different drinks for different parts of the house. You know, like, so he's like, oh, so you're on the porch. Oh, have a whatever it is, like this little, you know, like have a cream mint thing or mint julep. When you're in the lounge, like, oh, have a nice scotch. You know, you're in this place, you're in the dining room, have some wine. He goes, you're in the garage, have a beer. He goes, but there isn't one for the bathroom. And he's like, you know, so just have. He goes, I have beers in the shower now. It's like a spa day. You know, like, do you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
so if someone was to say like, oh yeah, I'm having a few beers or I'm having some wine in my house, oh, that's fine. I'm drinking beer in the shower. Oh, you need to go and see someone.
But apparently that's a thing. I didn't realise that there is a thing, having a beer in the shower or having a beer in the bath. Like having a hot shower and having a hot bath and having a cold beer. Apparently this is a thing, which I wasn't, because I don't drink beer. No. I wasn't ever aware of it as a, you know, I just, when I'm in the shower, I just take in a couple of sambucas, you know, that's what
just a couple of shots, take the edge off.
Whiskey chaser. That's
just a couple of Jaeger bombs, just to set me up for the day.
I'm just having my regular yard of ale in the shower.
I can imagine that, just all the water cascading down off of it.
Yeah, just coming down like that.
Oh, lovely. Yeah. Oh, that's got me stuck all down your face. Oh, lovely. That's set me up for the afternoon. That's good. But are you all right now though? You say you've tempered it a bit. You're drinking. You've calmed it down a bit.
Yeah, I think it's just about you know, I've got a couple of mates who are sober, and what they can't have is a relationship with alcohol, because it never works for them. And I think what I've got is a relationship with alcohol that sometimes is healthier and sometimes is not so healthy. And
yeah, same.
So long as you're consciously aware of it and you're consciously trying to put yourself on the right side of the line, you know. There's also, you know, related to our profession, we work in pubs and bars and places that serve booze. Also, we come off stage, you know, 10:30, 11 o'clock at night regularly. And then it's like, okay, go and, you know, get a normal night's sleep. It's hard to do that without a drink.
Yeah.
And you should do it without a drink, but you're not going to do it all the time without a drink.
No.
It's I think it's about the relationship, I think.
Yeah, and it depends what gigs as well, because there are some gigs where I won't drink. There's a few where I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to be in town. Yeah, I'm going to have a drink tonight, you know, and and that's when mates will come and meet me as well. They'll either come to the gig or they'll come down afterwards and we'll have a drink. And so, so it's not, I don't drink at every gig, but there are some where I'm like, I know I'm going to have a drink this weekend.
I'll tell you what I've got much better at is if I've been out drinking with mates or you know, gigging and then having a drink after. I don't really drink before I go on stage, but if I'm done, I'll have a drink. I've got very good at now, instead of getting home and cracking open another bottle, I'll have a cup of tea.
Nice.
Or I'll have a glass of water.
I
usually go for tea because the kind of process of making it kind of focuses me and it kind of, it's more effort, so therefore I'm less tempted to go, oh, I will have another bottle. It just kind of steadies you.
Well, I think because I'm like that, and I think that comes from every time I've got back and gone, yeah, I'm going to have another drink. I never finish it. I'm like, because the energy's gone. Another reason why I was enjoying what I was doing was because of where I was and who I was with. But now I'm home and I'm like, oh yeah, that's all sort of gone now, and it does change the taste of the wine. You kind of go, oh, this isn't nice now. So having done that a few times, and now I just get in and go, no, I've had a nice time. Cup of tea, some sleepy tea.
Yeah, nice. Sleepy
nice bit of sleepy tea, and then I'll get in, and my wife's a very light sleeper, so with all the best will in the world, I always end up sort of waking her up just by movement in the flat. And so I'll come in, and she's always brilliant, and she just like, right, and then she puts a sleep story on, you know, like Nick Offerman or whoever, and we just lay there and we go off, and it's lovely. And I never thought I'd say that. I always thought it'd be like full on party, fucking yeah, but no, it's like, no, nice sleepy tea, and a nice little story.
Yeah.
It's lovely.
Yeah. You need both in your life. You need a bit of hedonism and you need a bit of, you know, relaxation.
That is exactly it.
It's a lovely picturesque image that you've conjured up there, Rich.
There you go. We've what a way to finish. Beautiful. Thank you so much for joining me, Alexander. Where can we find you? Have you got things to plug? Are you doing shows and things?
So you can find me at Alexi Bennett on Twitter, Alexander E. Bennett on Instagram, Alexander Bennett Comedian on Facebook. I am doing the Edinburgh Fringe this year. I've got tickets to sell.
Excellent.
My show is called Alexander Bennett, I Can't Stand the Man Myself. Which obviously I've called it because whenever anyone else says my show, it'll sound like they hate me. And it's a show about self-hatred and men's mental health issues.
Excellent.
But specifically a critical inner voice is what the show is about.
Yeah.
And how I've made decisions in my recent life to attack my critical inner voice head on.
Sounds great.
So buy tickets for that when they go on sale. And I have a podcast called Born Yesterday with the comedian Andy Barr, in which...
Excellent. I love Andy Barr.
Andy Barr is a very funny man.
Very funny.
And the premise of Born Yesterday is that myself and Andy are clones of ourselves, and we only have learnt about 3 things in the day that we've been alive, and comedians have to come on and explain other things on the basis that we only understand 3 things. So the classic example is, okay, Rich, I only understand Toy Story 3, what a cheesecake is, and what a lawnmower is. And you've got 2 minutes to explain to me what the Second World War was. Your time starts there. That's the podcast.
That sounds amazing. And is that available everywhere?
It's available everywhere. We've had lots of guests, big names, and we've got lots of stuff coming up.
Excellent. Nice one. Thank you so much for coming on. This has been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you very much, Steve, for having me. Lovely to chat, Rich.
Absolutely lovely to chat. Thank you to everyone for listening. We'll see you next time on Insane in the Membrane.